morning, this is Chris from the Transpac Wing Project, giving you a really nice update. I'm sure I'll probably be out on the ocean and I've already started by the time you guys get to see this captain's vlog. So this is really giving you an idea on the weather routing, my routing as a start point of why I'm doing the routing that I'm doing along the journey, and the different reasons for why I'm starting where I'm starting, and the trajectory that I'm taking across the Pacific. And when you look at all this stuff, it looks sort of like a little bit of a minefield if you're not sure what I'm actually looking at. So I'm going to just run it through with you so you can see how much detail and how much research and how much planning goes into this whole idea. And then once we've gone through that, then I'll also go through a little bit of the safety side, and then also sort of what to expect over the next 10 days and why the first 10 days are so intense and so hectic for leaving, because it's sort of the only area that you can control is the time and the day that you leave. So don't get it wrong. So all these charts are very, very specific. A lot of them are all nautical and navigational charts, but some of them are more wind-based. So these three charts that you see over here all have these little red objects on them, which show you the wind direction, wind speed over each area. So this is May. So this is NOAA data of marine data that's been collected over 100 years for this specific area, showing the average wind speed and direction over that area in the month of May for that area. And then I've got June, July, and August, because that's obviously the time frame that I'm going to be crossing over the Pacific from California to the Hawaiian Islands. And it not only gives you the wind average speed and direction to help you navigate your way across the journey and know what to expect, but also gives you your current. So the blue little arrows that you see here give you your current, as in the ocean currents, and the direction of the current and the speed of the current. And that might not seem that relevant to all of you out there, but when you have a half a knot current or a 3/4 of a knot current going in a direction that you don't want to go in, that's a really big problem. So you've got to be able to work with the currents and make sure you don't get into situations where the current is against you, or going in at an angle that's really going to adversely affect your trajectory, especially if I have light breeze and I'm only able to go 1 knot and you've got a 3/4 of a knot current that's going in the wrong direction, you're not really going to be going forward at all, which is a problem. So all these charts, as in these three here, aren't wind and current charts. These are just charts that show pretty much the whole coastline in different frames. So this would be a large level frame which shows the whole of the United States all the way through to the Hawaiian Islands in this section here. So I would be focusing on San Francisco down to the bottom of San Diego, and then it gives me sort of a very broad range. It gives me the longitude and latitude, so I can work on how far I'm coming down, because I'm leaving from sort of 34 degrees, sort of 38 degrees up by San Francisco, and going all the way down to a latitude of like 21, which is the Hawaiian Islands. So that gives me like a broad overview perspective, and then this is a closer up view of everything, which helps me focus on the areas where I'm going to probably be leaving from. So we're currently down in Ventura over here, which is just south of Santa Barbara, just over here, which if you look into this chart, this is a very sort of narrowed down perspective of the Channel Islands, and we are sitting exactly at the moment over here, and that's where we are, right there, Port Hume, which is about 1 mile away from where we actually are sitting at the moment. I'm going through these charts. So the reason why I've got these all laid out is because it just shows you the challenge of getting out through the Channel Islands, especially because the wind anomalies in this area are very, very challenging. That's one of the reasons why I came down to base the project down here, to see if it was possible leaving from here. What I've realized by being down here is, and testing and training down in between the islands here, I've realized that the wind anomalies here are pretty severe, and there are a lot of back eddies, which are these back currents and back wind anomalies that happen around these islands. So it makes it very difficult to navigate and get in and out around these islands to this area here, which is southwest of St. Nicholas Island, which is roughly 58 miles from our start point in Ventura. And that would roughly take me 2.5 days if that's like best case scenario with the right conditions. Unfortunately, in the ocean, you never have best case scenario. It's pretty much not worst case. You either get worst case scenario or you get what you're hoping might happen, but not as good. So I always prefer worst case scenario, and if you're not able to get worst case scenario and still have a successful outcome, then you need to change your plan. So we've looked at this. I've been down here for about 2.5 months looking at all the wind anomalies, looking at testing between the islands and seeing how easy or how challenging it's going to be able to get out to this point, which I need to be out into this area so I can get into sort of fresh breeze. Because what happens is the wind comes down the Californian coastline and it comes to this area over here, and when it gets to the Channel Islands area, so the wind comes northwest all the way down here, and then when it gets to here, it bends in to this area over here, and it almost comes in, so it creates these onshore breezes that come like that, which means that I am not able to get out at the right angle to be able to get clear of this area over here. Whereas if I leave from in the Santa Cruz area, which is up north, which is about 80 miles south of San Francisco, even if I go directly south, so this is a trajectory line that would take me directly south. If I travel 180 miles south of Santa Cruz, I'll get to this point over here, which is 100 miles out from the island, which is actually quite a lot, but I'm still in the breeze, which is going down the coast, which means that it allows me to be able to get out at an angle of roughly around 70 degrees. Whereas if I leave from down here in between the Channel Islands, because the winds bend in here and create these really weird anomalies, I'm not able to even get out south. So I'm going to end up trying to get out to a point of around about here, which is roughly here, which is very far south, and the winds are still bending into this area, so I'm not going to be able to get as far west as I'd like to. So when I say far west, that means I'm going to get to somewhere around here, which means that I'm a lot further south than I should be, and I'm still going to have the winds that are still bending in, pushing me towards the coastline, which is not really what I want. And that all sort of makes sense when you start looking at these sort of wind anomalies here of where the consistent trades come in. So the trades only start in the area roughly around here. So I want to be roughly around this point over here. So I start getting that current that you can see that will help me, which will pull me a little bit more in that direction, even though it's only like a third to half a knot. That's good, because as you can see by this wind little sign over here, the winds are coming northwest and north, but mostly northwest, which means that I'm getting pushed that way. So the further I can be up north in that trajectory to get into that zone, the better. Otherwise, if you look at the winds down here, they are very straight, so it's going to make it, or they're very west northwest, so it makes it very difficult for me to be able to get out to a point. And you can see with here the Hawaiian Islands, so I don't want to get to a point where I'm this far south before I can get across, because then I'm battling across the conditions, and going like literally directly across the conditions is very difficult on my little craft. So I want to try and get out into the trades as far north as possible, and that's the challenge. And that's why at the moment we are looking at possibly getting everything ready over the next week, which would take me up until the 22nd of May to be able to put the craft on the trailer and possibly take us up to Santa Cruz, where I might be able to start from Santa Cruz. Well, that's probably like the best option, because in Santa Cruz it's very easy to, or a lot easier to get out directly into the wind conditions. I've still got about 25 miles in the Monterey Bay area to be able to get out before it goes into the Big Sur coastline, which goes down that coast, which goes down this coastline over here, that area from Monterey Bay there all the way down to Point Conception. So yeah, that's the plan. It's there's a lot of moving parts. So on the 22nd I have an update with my weather and routing team, which is Levin Brown, Mark Sponsler. Levin Brown is my main weather and routing guy from Scotland. He's done a lot of ocean passages, and he was my weather and routing guy on the transatlantic and my test run last year. Mark Sponsler is the main surf forecaster for Storm Surf, and he's a great friend of mine. I surfed with him out at Mavericks, and he's a great guy, and he also is very knowledgeable about the local wind conditions. So we take all the information that we have, look at the wind over a 1 week window or a 10-day window to see what's going to be best, whether we're going to find the right weather to be able to leave from down here in Ventura that's going to allow me to be able to get out safely between the islands. If we can't find the window that we need with the right conditions that will allow me able to get out safely and quickly into the right conditions, then I'll just take the craft out of the water, put it on the back of the trailer. I've got a really nice new trailer that will allow me to be able to keep my rudder still in without having to change anything. Put it up behind, hook it up to my 4x4 and drive it up with my team, Aaron, who works with me on the project and project lead on the logistics side. We'll go up in tandem to drive it up to Santa Cruz, which will be about a 6 to 7 hour drive, about 250 to 300 miles up to Santa Cruz. Put the craft into the water, and then reload all the gear and all the food and everything into the craft to be able to leave from there, get a tow out the Santa Cruz harbor to off the lighthouse and start off there. And it's roughly 20 miles to get across the Monterey Bay and out, which will make it easier for me to be able to get out into the right conditions, and then head down the coast and out from there. It also gives me 1 or 2 little safety points to be able to exit out if anything dramatic needs to be changed or amended. But I'm pretty sure that we've got everything in check from the last time around. So looking forward to leave. That gives you just a little overview of like the depth and detail that goes into making these kind of decisions. And once we make the decision on where we're going to be leaving from, on what date, there's roughly a 48 hour to 52 hour window that it takes me to prep everything, to action everything, to start everything, to be able to get from making the call to getting the craft 100% ready into the location that we need to depart from, packed and ready to go. Especially if we're moving it up to Santa Cruz, it takes a good 12 to 24 hours to get it there overnight, sleep, repack everything the next day in the water, test everything in the water, on the water, get the balancing of the craft right, and then pull the trigger to go at that weather window time frame that we need to be able to get into the conditions correctly. And that is your summary of the routing and weather, to be able to just start. Once I start, then it goes into the whole trajectory of me actually going down the coastline, trying to get as far out as I can as quickly as possible, and into these conditions that you see here, where you see the angle of these little wind vanes pointing in the direction towards Hawaii. So the objective is to not go too far south, get into the current, get into the wind that's going to help me. So by the time I get like 500 miles out, which will be probably about 3.5 to 4 weeks out, so the first month I should be able to get to this point over here. Once I get to this point, then I get to the conditions which are most consistently called the trades, where I have the wind mostly behind me or on my starboard quarter. When I say my starboard quarter, would mean my right hand back aft side of the craft, and it helps me get towards the Hawaiian Islands, and then I'm just pointing up to be able to get to Oahu, where I'm meant to be finishing, which is about halfway up the Hawaiian Island chain over here. And as you can see, when I get to this point over here, which is about halfway, I sort of should have mostly the wind and the current sort of with me in the last sort of 3 weeks. That's the plan. We'll see if the plan works out as planned. And that is your routing in summary in a nutshell. I know it's a very big nutshell because it's quite long, but there's a lot of detail that goes into it. So I hope that's really helpful and insightful. And this is Chris from the Weather and Routing. And now after this, we're going to go into the safety. So safety is everything on these journeys, as you know. Like, I put a huge amount of detail, emphasis, and planning preparation into the safety side of these adventures. Most people think I'm barking mad, but I'm actually really risk adverse, which sounds really bizarre to most people. But when I say I'm really risk adverse, like, I do everything in my power to be able to have a backup of a backup of a backup to ensure that I can minimize the risk and mitigate the risk as much as possible, so I can proceed with confidence and get the outcome and the result that I'm looking for, no matter what happens, what fails, because I have a redundancy of every single major system on multiple levels. So let me walk you and talk you through that. So one of the most important things is obviously food, water, and shelter. Well, I have the shelter from my little craft in my little pod. Food, I have all the different food stuff that you can see here, which is very much detailed and itemized as per the nutrition captain's vlog that I've done. I've also got a whole lot of new stuff that we're adding in, which is the very specific nutrition based on fresh dried fruit and nuts, which also helps from your immune system and helps keep your immune system strong. But then mostly also on the safety aspect. The safety aspect is obviously key. I've spoken a little bit about the comm systems. So we've already run through most of the comm systems, so I'm not going to go through those in detail at all. So you've got your yellow brick, you've got your Garmin inReach, you've got multiple different VHF radios. Besides the VHF radio that's built into the craft, I've got 2 backup handhelds, so the one backs up against the other. Then I've got the Explorer, B-Gun Explorer, which is a SATCOM system. I've got the main SATCOM system. I've got my iSat, which is in a waterproof bag, which also goes into my grab bag, which is my emergency bag. And then I've got my water systems on the craft. So water as in hydration is the most important thing. Obviously, I can't go and just turn on a tap out there. I'm in the middle of the ocean. So I have my main Cadden water maker, which is a 12-volt system, which is built into the craft. That over an hour will give me enough water that I need for the day or for a couple of days within an hour. So roughly about 10 liters an hour, which is I think about a gallon, roughly a gallon and a half. Then also what I have as a backup to that is I have these 10-liter water bladders. So these MSR bladders fill up 10 liters in here, and what I do is I put in roughly 30 liters either side, so 3 of these in each of my forward compartments, in my screw compartments that are in the belly of the craft, which makes 60 liters in total. 60 liters is roughly 60 kilograms. 60 liters will also give me, if my journey is roughly going to be 60 to 70 days, that means that I have 70, I'll take 30 liters in one side, 30 liters in the other, and then I'll also have an extra 10 liter that's in my main compartment, which I use for the first 10 days when I'm out there, because the weather's probably going to be the roughest, so I don't want to have to go into any of my main compartments to try and find extra water, and I don't want to run my water maker for the first 10 days because I'm going to need the most amount of my power for my craft gets used by my autopilot and running all my main systems for the first 10 days. When the weather's most intense, it uses the most amounts of battery. So I don't want to be running my water maker because my water maker uses the most amount of battery and power that my craft utilizes. So I want to save my battery just for the autopilot and making sure that all my systems run smoothly, so I don't have to run my water maker. So because in the first 10 days the weather is going to be the most intense, I cannot run my water maker when the weather's really, really hectic because it sucks up air into the system, which means that the system will fail. So what I do is I put in 60 liters of emergency water as ballast. So everything is multifunctional. The ballast works as to keep my craft stable in the water, keeps it solid, keeps it neutral, and it also means that I've got 60 liters of water that I can rely on just in case my main water maker fails at any particular time. That means I still have roughly 1 liter a day as emergency water for hydration to be able to get me through to the Hawaiian Islands. A lot of people don't put in that kind of backup of the backup. And then as a backup to that, I also have, I just received it yesterday, which I've been really, really looking forward to getting, which is the little Katadyn Survivor 06, which is the smallest water desalination unit that exists on the planet. This is a handheld pump. So a lot of explorers out there will have a water maker as a 12 volt, and then might have a backup to that, like another 12 volts. But if any of your electrics fail, you don't have anything that you can back up that's hand powered. So you don't want to rely on all your electronics, because if they all fail, you get hit by lightning or whatever happens, then you are pretty screwed. So I have my main 12 volt water desalination reverse osmosis unit, which is powered by my battery banks and my solar. Then I have the hydration packs as bladders, which double up as ballast for stabilization. Then I have the manual water maker, I actually did have another one which is a lot bigger, which is very heavy. So I've gone down to this smaller one, which weighs literally 3 or 4 kilograms, which is really light. And this is sort of what the Navy SEALs would use to be able to go into sort of special black ops, because it's the smallest water desalination unit that exists on the planet. What happens is you've got this one pipe that you put into the salt water, and then this other little pipe, which is the pipe that comes out the other side, would go into your little mini water bladder. So that one little pipe I put into this little bladder to fill it up. This would go into the salt water, and then I'd use this to pump, hand pump, for about half an hour. An hour will give me roughly 3 liters, so half a gallon in probably an hour, which is a lot of pumping to get a very little water, but very interesting. And that is sort of mostly the safety systems that I would probably lay out what keeps you alive out there as like your basic resources. And then all of this stuff, I would have that in my grab bag. I'd also have this Garmin in my grab bag as well, with my distress flares and a little bit of food. And then one of these little water bladders would be attached to my grab bag. So in case of emergency, if my craft had to catch on fire and I had to leave my craft, I'd take my tiny little open, what is it? It's called a life raft. Almost forgot, because I hopefully don't want to use it. And I'd grab my grab bag, jump in my life raft, and then I'm good to go. And I've got communication, I've got water, I've got a backup water maker handheld system, and I'm pretty much safe because I've got a VHF radio in there as well, so I can communicate with line of sight. I can communicate by satellite. My EPIRB, which is my electronic positioning indicator beacon, which I spoke about last time I would have triggered, they'll know my exact position, and I'll be sitting in my life raft, sun tanning, waiting to get collected, hopefully a couple days later. And that is your summary of safety.